right, diving deep today. We're looking at welfare states
Uh-huh.
and how they connect to, well, economic growth,
Yeah.
which honestly sounds a bit dry, but
Yeah, it does.
they've got research here, and it gets fascinating fast.
Oh, for sure.
It's like a crash course
Mm-hmm.
on how countries use those safety nets,
Yeah.
benefits,
Yeah. Yeah.
not just to help people, which you'd think,
Right.
but as part of their whole economic strategy
That's its strategy.
in this crazy globalized world,
Absolutely.
Globalization, always a fun topic.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The old ways of making economies grow, right?
Yeah.
They aren't working like they used to.
They don't work.
So what we're going to explore today
Yeah.
are the new recipes, so to speak.
Okay.
Countries are trying out their growth models,
Both models.
or we'll call them GMs for short,
GM's got it.
to thrive, right?
Yeah.
In this, what we call post-industrial world.
Okay, so GM's, that's the economic game plan.
That's it.
But I got to admit, when I hear post-industrial, I kind of zone out,
Yeah.
What does that even mean, really?
I hear you. It can sound a bit abstract.
It does.
So think back, like mid-20th century, Fordist era, big factories, remember?
Vaguely.
Mass production lines,
Yeah.
jobs for life, that whole thing.
Okay, so, like, that's fading away.
Debating, yeah.
What's taking its place then?
Now it's more about services, tech, global supply chains,
Right, so we can't just, like, make stuff anymore and set.
Not so much, no.
Gotcha. So these GMs, it's how countries adapt to that.
Exactly.
And our research, it focused on 4 main types, right?
Or main types.
Yep.
What were they again?
Okay, so we've got consumption-led,
Huh?
export-led,
Okay.
balance,
Balance.
and then the one nobody wants, the failed model.
Oof. Yeah, that one doesn't sound good.
Not so much.
But here's the thing that really gets me.
Yeah.
Welfare states, they're not just like a safety net anymore.
No.
They're
Yep.
key players in these GMs.
They are. It's fascinating. I always thought of them as totally separate things.
I get that it's not intuitive.
How did that even work then?
All right, think of it this way. Welfare states, they've got 2 big jobs.
Okay, 2 jobs.
One, supporting accumulation,
Accumulation.
meaning helping the economy grow, basically.
Right. Got to have growth.
And then 2, ensuring what we call legitimation.
Legitimation. That's a new one.
It means making the system, the whole thing,
Yeah.
feel fair to citizens so they'll support it.
Like buy-in from the people.
Exactly. Gotta have both.
Okay, I see the connection now. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes those goals, they got to clash, right?
Absolutely.
Like what's good for the economy
Uh-huh.
might not feel fair to everyone.
You hit the nail on the head.
So it's this balancing act. Like how much tension can a society handle?
Exactly. It's this constant push and pull.
And the choices governments make, they have huge impact.
Huge, yeah, on people's actual lives.
Okay, let's start with, what was it, consumption?
Consumption-led, yeah.
UK is a good example there, right?
Yeah. UK is a great example, yeah.
So in that model,
Mm-hmm.
it's all about getting people spending money.
Keep that economy humming.
Yeah. Keep it moving.
Keep it moving.
Makes sense on the surface.
Yeah, yeah.
But as you said, trade-offs, right?
Not always trade-off.
What's the downside there?
Well, critics would say it's like squeezing a balloon, right?
Okay.
You inflate one part, but another part gets squeezed smaller.
So you might get growth, but...
But is it sustainable?
And who's getting squeezed?
Exactly. That's the key question.
In the UK, what happened?
They did these activation policies.
Activation.
Basically pushing people into the workforce, even,
Even people who, like, maybe can't work.
even those with disabilities. Yeah.
More workers, more spending.
Right. That's the logic.
But, what's the cost?
That's the thing.
What was the cost in the UK?
Well, they actually reclassified some people with disabilities
Oh, wow.
as unemployed.
So they could push them into jobs.
Basically, yeah. Toward low-wage jobs
Yeah.
often.
That's pretty drastic.
It is, yeah.
So in the name of this, boosting the economy,
Mm-hmm.
they might be pushing vulnerable people
Yeah.
into jobs that,
Don't even pay a living wage.
that don't even pay enough.
That's the tension there.
It really makes you think
It does.
about who benefits from this kind of growth, right?
It's not always a rising tide that lifts all boats.
Yeah, it challenges that whole idea.
Challenges the assumptions, yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit.
Sure.
Talk about export-led model, Germany being the example.
Germany, yeah, they're fascinating.
They did reforms too, right?
Similar to the UK, pushing people towards work
To keep wages low.
to keep wages competitive for exports.
Okay.
But their system, it has this dual nature.
Dual nature.
It's important to understand.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so they provide a lot of support
Okay.
benefits for skilled workers.
Right. And like what sectors?
Export industries, your high-tech manufacturing,
Okay.
engineering, that sort of thing. But at the same time,
Mm.
they put pressure on lower wage sectors.
So your service jobs, things like that.
Exactly. Keep those wages down.
So it's like they're trying to keep two different groups happy.
That's the balance they're trying to strike.
The skilled workers benefit,
Yeah.
but those in like less skilled jobs, they get squeezed.
There's that tension again. Yeah.
So why do they do that?
They need those exports flowing
To fuel the
to
economy.
fuel the economy. Exactly.
But they also got to keep the peace at home.
Social peace is crucial. Yeah.
So how do they manage that?
They have this huge increase in what they call mini jobs.
Mini jobs.
Part-time, low-paying.
I've heard of those.
Yeah. They help families make ends meet.
Okay, so that's good.
On the surface, yes. But are they trapping people in low wages?
Is it a real solution? Or just
a Band-Aid?
Yeah, exactly.
like-
Can this dual system even be sustained?
Big questions there.
Yeah, it sounds like recipe for tension, maybe down the line.
It could be, yeah.
Germany's walking a tightrope there.
They are, very carefully.
And it makes me think,
Yeah.
these growth models, they're not just, some abstract economic theory, right?
No, not at all.
They have real effects.
Yeah.
And it's different everywhere,
They play out differently,
depending on the country.
depending on the context.
Yeah,
you know?
okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Good.
So on to the next model then.
All right.
The balanced one, right?
Balanced model. Yep.
Sweden's the poster child there.
Sweden, yeah.
They try to blend, like, the best of both worlds.
That's the goal. Mix it up.
Their pension reforms, that's an example, right?
Pension reforms are a great example, yeah.
Okay, tell me more about that. I'm curious.
So they wanted a stable pension system
Makes sense.
without, huge cuts to benefits
How?
or making people pay way more.
So how'd they do it?
They brought in private pension accounts
Wait, private account.
alongside the public system.
But don't those usually mean more risk?
They can, yeah.
And often they lead to more inequality.
That's a common concern.
So how did Sweden manage that?
That's the fascinating part. They kept inequality pretty low.
Really? That doesn't seem like it should work.
It's counterintuitive, for
How'd
sure.
they pull that off?
It's complex, a lot of factors, strong safety net,
Okay.
policies for social mobility,
Mm-hmm.
and their approach to housing, I think you'll find interesting.
Housing. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. What's that got to do with it?
Well, Sweden shifted, right, from being pretty neutral on housing,
Like, they didn't care if people rented or owned.
basically, yeah,
And they switched to what?
to strongly encouraging homeownership,
Interesting.
which, can be good for individuals.
Yeah, own your own place. That's the dream.
Right, but it also led to higher prices
Makes sense. More demand.
and a lot of people taking on debt.
So encouraging homeownership,
Mm-hmm.
which sounds good, right?
It does, yeah.
Can actually fuel this debt-driven consumption,
It can contribute, yeah.
which could be a problem later on.
Potentially.
It's like every policy has these unintended consequences.
Yeah, it highlights that, yeah.
No perfect system, even when you're trying to be balanced.
Exactly. It's a constant process of adjustment.
So even in Sweden, there's downsides.
There are trade-offs everywhere.
It makes you wonder if any of these models can really deliver
Deliver on the promise. Yeah.
sustainable growth
Mhm.
without creating new messes.
That's the question.
Tough one.
It is a tough one.
All right, guess we got to tackle the last model then.
The one everyone wants to avoid.
Yeah, the failed model, with Italy as our example.
Italy, yeah, complex situation.
What went wrong there? Why are they stagnating?
One key takeaway from the research
Okay.
is their family policies.
Like what specifically?
Child allowances, for example.
Yeah, those are meant to help families, right?
They are, but in Italy, they
Mhm.
seem driven more by political goals.
Than by like actual economic needs?
Yeah, than by clear economic objectives.
Okay, break that down for me. What do you mean political goals?
So child allowances, they were supposed to
Support families?
support families, but
Yeah,
also
yeah.
boost birth rates, which
Okay, to address the aging population, I get that.
that was the idea, yeah.
Hmm.
But they were also used to appeal to certain voters,
Which voters?
particularly right-wing voters,
Ah,
concerned about declining birth rates among native Italians.
so it was less about helping families overall,
Mm-hmm.
more about targeting a specific group
To get their vote.
to secure their votes. Yeah, okay.
And sometimes these sweeteners
Sweeteners.
for voters, they're baked right into the model,
The growth model itself.
right into it. Take the U.S., for example.
Oh, yeah.
Their home mortgage interest deduction.
That's a big tax break.
Huge tax break.
For homeowners.
For homeowners, right.
But doesn't that mostly help those who are already well off?
Yeah, tends to skew that way.
Those who can afford to buy a house in the first place.
Exactly, and it reinforces their growth model.
Which relies on what?
Consumer spending, especially in housing,
Right. So it keeps a certain group happy,
keeps them happy.
strengthens the existing system,
Strengthens it, yeah.
and keeps people supporting that model.
All connected.
Wow. It's like a whole web of interconnected things.
It is a complex system.
Okay, so back to Italy.
Right.
You were saying child allowances used for political ends.
Yeah, to appeal to certain voters.
Right-wing voters?
Right.
Worried about birth rates?
Among native Italians, yeah.
So less about supporting families in general,
Mm-hmm.
more about what playing to a specific group.
Exactly.
And there was also that push, right,
Yes, from the right-wing parties.
to restrict those baby bonuses
Right.
to Italian citizens only.
Or their citizens,
So excluding immigrants.
explicitly excluding them.
That sounds, I mean, that's pretty divisive, right?
It is, yeah. It creates a clear division.
Instead of finding solutions for everyone.
It pits groups against each other
And it plays on those anxieties,
about national identity, scarcity of resources.
which benefits, well, certain political parties.
It does, yeah.
It's like they're using welfare
Mhm.
to score political points
To their advantage.
rather than actually addressing the root problems.
That's one way to look at it.
It seems like they're trying to solve a demographic problem
Mm-hmm.
with a policy that'll just make divisions worse.
It could exacerbate those tensions.
Not exactly a recipe for long-term stability, is it?
Not ideal, no.
And on top of that,
Yeah.
Italy's got those EU budget rules to follow,
Right. They're committed to those.
which limit what they can do
It limits their options, yeah.
when it comes to spending.
Spending to stimulate their economy.
So they're stuck, kinda.
Caught between a rock and a hard place, yeah.
External constraints, internal pressures.
Makes it tough to maneuver.
Makes you wonder, can they get out of this failed model?
It's a challenge, for sure.
It really highlights how tricky this whole thing is.
It's a complex web, yeah.
Okay, so we've got these 4 growth models
Mm-hmm.
and how they're used in different places.
Different context.
But there's another layer, right?
There is another piece to the puzzle.
You mentioned something about 5 ways,
5 specific pathways
the 5 pathways to do what?
to build political support for these models.
Ah, okay, so it's not just about the economics.
It's about the politics, too.
5 pathways.
Yeah.
All right, you piqued my curiosity. Lay it on me.
All right, let's break them down one by one.
Mhm.
It's like, think of them as tools, right? In a government's toolkit,
A toolkit, okay.
they can use these pathways
Uh-huh.
to kind of fine-tune their growth model,
Make it work better.
make it more palatable to the public.
Palatable, so easier to swallow.
Yeah, basically make it more acceptable.
So people don't, like, revolt.
Exactly, and ultimately stay in power.
Ah, okay, so there's a political strategy here, too.
Big time.
Okay, I'm ready. What's the first pathway? Hit me with it.
All right, pathway number 1.
Hmm?
Our research calls it signaling managerial competence.
Signaling managerial competence. That's a mouthful.
It is, but it basically means convincing those with capital.
So, your investors, businesses, the wealthy folks,
Right, all those folks.
that the government's got it handled.
Got it under control, responsible.
A safe bet for their money.
Exactly, safe bet.
So it's about appearances more than, like, reality.
There's an element of that, yeah.
Like putting on a good show
Kinda, yeah, project an image.
of stability,
Stability, competence.
even if behind the scenes
Things might be a bit messier.
a bit messier, yeah.
Remember Italy? Struggling with debt.
Oh, yeah, they were in a tough spot.
To reassure those global markets, they did this reshuffling of social spending.
They moved money around.
Yeah, without actually spending more overall.
Okay, we're being responsible.
We're not going crazy with the spending.
Exactly, calming those nerves.
It's like when you're applying for a loan,
Yeah, I see the analogy.
you got to show the bank you're good with money.
Even if you're, like, barely making rent.
Exactly. Put on that good face. And the UK did something similar, remember?
Wait.
When Labour came in, late 90s,
Okay.
they stuck to the previous government's spending limits.
Even though they wanted to do different things.
They had different priorities.
But they wanted to show
got to be trusted.
with the economy.
That's key.
Wow, it's all about perception.
Perception is huge, yeah.
Okay, so that's signaling competence. What's the next pathway?
Pathway number 2, this one's a bit more straightforward. Buying voter support.
Okay, that one sounds pretty self-explanatory.
It is, on the surface.
Keep the voters happy with benefits.
Keep them happy. They'll keep you in office.
Simple as that.
Well, it can be more nuanced.
How so?
Think back to Italy, those baby bonuses.
Right, the ones for Italian citizens only.
Those were clearly designed
Yeah.
to appeal to a specific group.
Right-wing voters worried about those birth rates.
Exactly. It was targeted.
So less about supporting all families,
Mm-hmm.
more about getting votes from a specific group.
Procuring those votes, yeah.
And sometimes these sweeteners,
Yeah, the sweeteners.
they're built right into the growth model itself.
Baked right in. Take the U.S., for example.
Again, what do?
That home mortgage interest deduction.
Right, the big tax break for homeowners.
It primarily benefits who?
Well, people who own homes,
Which tend to be.
those who are already better off.
Exactly.
And it reinforces their growth model,
Based on consumer spending.
especially in the housing market.
You got it.
So it keeps those homeowners happy,
Keeps them happy.
makes the system stronger,
Strengthens the system.
and ensures continued support for that model.
It's all interconnected.
No, like a whole ecosystem.
A very carefully designed ecosystem.
All right, on to pathway number 3 then.
Number 3. This one's interesting.
Lay it on me.
It's called structuring group identities.
Okay, that one sounds a bit more abstract.
It is a bit more subtle.
Give me a concrete example.
Think about Sweden again.
All right, Sweden.
Their shift towards home ownership.
They went from neutral to, like, really pushing it.
That's right.
But that wasn't just about economics, was it?
It wasn't just about the money, no.
It was about something more.
It was about shaping how people saw themselves.
Their identity, you mean?
Exactly, their role in society.
Instead of seeing themselves as what?
As just workers or members of a social class
They started to see themselves as homeowners.
with shared interests, aspirations,
And those interests, they aligned with.
with the goals of the balanced growth model.
Homeowners want stable growth, rising property values.
Exactly, things like that.
So it's a way to subtly influence
To subtly shape political preferences.
and build support for that economic agenda.
It's very clever.
It's like you're not even telling them what to think,
You're creating an environment.
where those ideas naturally take root.
Exactly. It's about shaping the soil, so to speak.
Wow, that's powerful stuff.
It is very effective.
Okay, what's next on our list of pathways?
Pathway number 4. This one's a bit more controversial.
Oh, controversial? I'm intrigued.
This one's called creating wedge issues.
Which issues? Okay, what's that all about?
It's about using welfare policy
Mhm.
to highlight differences between groups,
Okay.
to make some seem more deserving of help than others.
Like creating divisions.
Yeah, that's the idea, driving a wedge.
Give me an example.
Remember Italy, restricting those baby bonuses?
To Italian citizens only.
That's it. That's a clear wedge issue.
It creates a divide between,
Native-born Italians and immigrants.
and it plays on those anxieties.
About national identity, scarcity.
Benefits for us, but not for them.
Exactly. It's a classic tactic.
And it benefits who?
Well, certain political parties, those who can exploit those divisions.
Right. So it's not just about immigration.
It's a broader strategy.
We saw in the UK too, right?
With the disability benefits reforms.
They shifted from like a universal program
Mm-hmm.
to one that's more means tested.
Stricter eligibility.
And that changed how people saw it.
It shifted the framing.
From deserving to maybe undeserving,
Yeah, that made it easier.
to cut those benefits
Exactly. It created a narrative.
of us versus them.
Taxpayers versus benefit recipients.
Classic tactic, divide and conquer.
Very effective.
Distract from the real issues.
Or push through unpopular policies.
Prevent people from uniting.
Exactly. Keeps them from forming coalitions.
To challenge the
That's
system.
status quo.
So 4 down, 1 to go.
And this one might be the most important.
Okay, I'm ready. Hit me.
Pathway number 5. Maintaining acceptable levels of inequality.
Maintaining acceptable levels of inequality? What does that even mean?
It's about finding that sweet spot, you know,
Sweet spot of what?
the level of inequality that a society can handle
Before things get messy.
before things boil over.
Yeah.
Yeah, social unrest.
So like a country like Sweden,
Mm-hmm.
they're all about equality.
Strong social safety net, yeah.
They might tolerate more inequality than, say, Italy.
Italy's got those tensions, economic stagnation.
Makes sense. Different contexts, different tolerance levels,
Exactly. It's about managing expectations,
keeping people from getting too angry.
keeping things relatively stable.
So welfare states aren't just about redistributing wealth,
No, they're about managing the whole system,
keeping enough people feeling like they have a stake,
even if it's not perfect.
even if it's not perfectly fair or equal.
That's the key.
Wow, these 5 pathways really show,
They show how welfare states are. Like,
well, more than just safety nets.
they're embedded in everything.
Politics, economics, the whole fabric of society.
Absolutely.
And they're used strategically
Very strategic.
to shape not just like the economy, but also how people think and behave.
Yeah, their attitudes, their political choices.
Mind-blowing when you really think about it.
It is when you pull back the curtain.
Okay, so we've got these models, the pathways,
Mm-hmm.
but you said before,
Mm-hmm.
these models, they play out differently in different places.
Context is everything.
So what are some of the key factors
That shape how these models actually work.
in the real world?
In the real world, yeah.
Right.
But one of the most important is the role of political parties.
Yeah, parties, they're the ones who, like, connect the dots,
Like
right?
the connectors, yeah.
Between, like, the economic stuff, the welfare programs, and what voters actually care about.
Exactly. They bridge that gap.
They translate, kind of.
They translate, they're the storytellers, you could say.
Okay, the storytellers, I like that.
They take these complex issues.
Yeah, economics, welfare, it gets complicated.
It does. Very.
And they try to make it make sense for people.
make it relatable, yeah.
Convince them, hey, our way is the best way.
That's the goal, yeah. Get people on board.
So a growth model, it can't just be good economically, right?
Not enough.
It has to be sold politically,
It has to be sold, marketed, yeah.
and that's where the parties come in.
That's their role, yeah.
And it's tricky because
It is, yeah.
you got to appeal to all these different groups,
Different interests, yeah.
build coalitions, make compromises.
Sometimes even resort to those wedge issue tactics.
We talked about.
They're not always pretty.
Like they're playing this like high stakes game,
High stakes, for sure.
balancing all these competing demands.
Economic goals, social values, political realities.
Yeah, it's a lot to juggle.
It is a constant juggling act.
And the stakes are high because
yeah.
these choices, they affect real people.
Real people's lives, yeah.
It makes you wonder, can any of these models really work?
Can they deliver? Yeah. On their promises.
Sustainable growth, fairness, the whole package.
Without creating new problems down the line.
That's the question, isn't it?
The million-dollar question, for sure.
All right, so we've covered a lot.
We have, yeah.
4 growth models, those 5 pathways for legitimizing them,
Those pathways, yeah, the political tools.
and the crucial role of, well, the parties
The parties are key players, yeah.
as we try to make sense of this whole landscape.
This complex landscape.
What are some of the, like, big takeaways? Big takeaways. Okay, well,
I guess we should really keep in mind as we,
as we move forward.
as we try to navigate all this.
I think the biggest one is welfare states.
Yeah.
They're not just about, providing a safety net,
Not just a handout.
not just a handout. No,
They're connected to
tightly intertwined.
with how economies grow with political power.
Absolutely. They're part of the power structure,
It's like they're this hidden force shaping everything,
working behind the scenes.
influencing how the whole system functions
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
and how they're used. Well, it's different everywhere.
Different in each country, yeah.
We saw how the UK, with their activation policies,
Mm.
they're aiming for growth, but raises questions about, like, the quality of those jobs.
And who benefits? Yeah.
Who's really winning, who's losing?
Those are the key questions.
And Germany trying to balance those two groups,
Skilled workers versus those in low-wage sectors.
creating winners and losers,
Yeah,
essentially.
that's the consequence of that model. And then Sweden trying to find that balance,
Export competitiveness and domestic consumption.
even with good intentions.
Even with the best intentions.
Policies can have unintended consequences.
There's always a ripple effect.
Yeah, nothing happens in isolation.
It's all interconnected.
And then there's Italy
Italy, yeah.
struggling to find a way forward.
Stuck in that failed model.
Political gridlock,
Okay.
external pressures.
It's a tough spot to be in.
It highlights, like, there's no one right answer.
No easy solutions, that's for sure.
Every country's navigating this complex maze,
It's a maze, yeah.
trying to balance all these competing things.
Competing demands, yeah.
Economic goals, social values, political realities,
It's a balancing act.
and there are no easy answers.
No easy answers, that's the takeaway.
So as we face, all these new challenges,
New challenges.
automation, climate change, inequality,
Those are the big ones.
what happens to these growth models? Can they adapt?
That's the big question.
The world's changing so fast.
Faster than ever.
The old ways, maybe they're not enough anymore.
We might need new thinking.
New ideas, a willingness to, question everything.
Challenge the status quo, yeah.
What about welfare states then?
What about them? Yeah.
Can they provide security?
In a world of precarious work,
Rising inequality, all that.
it's a crucial question.
It feels like We're at a turning point.
A crossroads, yeah.
The choices we make now, they'll determine the future.
They will shape the future, absolutely.
For us, for our kids, for everyone.
It's a lot of responsibility.
It is a lot to think about.
It is.
But we've only scratched the surface here.
A brief overview, yeah.
But hopefully, it's given you a new perspective.
A new lens to view these issues.
The world's complex.
Very complex.
Interconnected, all these systems interacting.
And welfare states, they're right at the heart of it.
Understanding that, it's crucial, I think.
For anyone who wants to understand the world.
And maybe even try to change it.
To make it better, yeah.
So, keep learning. Keep asking questions.
Don't be afraid to challenge assumptions.
Demand better solutions, ones that work for everyone.
Not just a select few.
Stay curious, folks. That's the most important thing.
Stay curious.